And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, originating from the Ridge Flora Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. I'd like to remind you that if you or any of your friends have thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. Check out our YouTube page at the Barry Foster Show daily, as we'll be putting up new programming regularly. And subscribe to our YouTube page. And join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. That would be very helpful. And we'd like to welcome back John Larsen.
Hey, good morning.
How are you feeling, sir?
I guess 5 minutes before noon, yes. Well, a lot better than I did a couple weeks ago, let me put it that way. And that is something that, at my age, that's the first time I've ever had that. They call it a kidney stone. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Well, you had more than one, actually. You had several kidney stones.
No, I had one.
One? It was pretty big, though, wasn't it?
It was
like the Death Star?
6 millimeters. And from what I've been told by other people that know, including medical people, if it's a 2 or 3, you have a good chance of passing it. But anything above that, it's pretty hard. And so mine ended up having to get taken out, which extended the
And that was there's no fun there.
No, it wasn't.
No fun there. Well, while you were gone, as you can see, we have inherited some new equipment.
Right,
I now have the John Scaglione Memorial Microphone. John used to be our webmaster and passed away suddenly, and I've inherited some of his equipment. And I really want to thank Christy for that. And we are moving forward. We have a new app in progress that will allow you to put it on your phone and tap that and find the latest episodes. We're getting new subscribers hand over fist. And when we reach 100 for 90 days, we'll be able to go live like we used to back in the olden days.
Well, and I guess for anybody that's listening that hasn't subscribed to help us out, they need to do that.
Oh, yeah. You go to YouTube, look for The Barry Foster Show. Hit that red subscribe button, and that'll help us more than you knew. We currently have some pending interviews. We're trying to get Evan Power, somebody from Rollback Now, to talk about the counties getting together and doing rollback rates for their individual counties to stop tax increases. And we're going to be talking about that in the very near future. We got to call into Father Frank Pavone from Right Side Broadcasting Network, who we met at a faith engagement event with the Highlands County Republican Party several months ago. MadeInUSA.com, who we've spoken to before, with tariffs now being still kind of the big story. We have all this stuff made in USA. In fact, I got some coasters made from 863 Creations, and I asked Thomas, I said, can you put on the back, no tariffs, made in USA? So he did. He put that in, so I'm not paying any tariffs on that. We've got some calls into Visit Central Florida, Visit Space Coast, some other Florida fun travel interviews, and also the Florida Division of Elections, because as we've discussed, they are in their current off-year voter roll cleanup in the Sunshine State, and the Republicans are losing voters roughly half the rate of Democrats, and that has flipped Miami-Dade County to being a red county. At this taping on Wednesday, May 21st, they are currently up 464,000 to roughly 444,000. The RPOF now is looking at Duval and Palm Beach County, and statewide, they're up by about 1.3 million voters. And that's not because of new Republicans. That's because of cleaning up the rolls, and most of the people who were not supposed to be on the rolls were Democrats. So,
right. I think you have to go, what is it, 5 cycles that you don't vote?
Is it 5 cycles?
I want to say 5. I could be wrong in that 5 voting cycles where you didn't vote. Then I guess they I don't know if they send you a reminder and say, hey, are you still an active person or not? Then we'll take you off the rolls.
Yeah, I would lobby, and like I said, we're going to try to get somebody from the Florida Division of Elections. But I would like to lobby them that be a much shorter turnaround time. That if you get a bill in the mail and you don't pay your bill 1 month, if you don't pay your bill the second month, whatever service that is stops. And I think that we would do well to begin to tell some of these voters, look, if you don't want to vote, then you don't have to vote. And if you get dumped off the voter rolls, you always can go back and re-register.
Well, the thing of it is, I mean, it's so easy not to let that happen. You get a mail-in ballot for every election. All you have to do is contact the office. They will mail you a ballot. You can fill it out at home. You never have to leave home. Put it in the mailbox. The postman takes it and drops it off for you. So, there's an easy way to stay active as a voter.
Well, we've seen some of the shenanigans that's happened with mail-in voting, and I know I've gotten more than one encouragement from the RPOF and from the Highlands County Republican Party to renew my mail-in status and make sure I get a mail-in vote. And I'm just not. I'm personally, I'm a day of show guy. I think that there's way too much room for dabbling in vote by mail. But I know that there are people who are bedridden or housebound or for some reason can't get to the polls. I get it.
Yep.
I get it, and there's some of that that's necessary. But I think that if I got a letter in the mail from Karen Healy that says, Mr. Foster, I'm sorry you haven't voted in the last two cycles. If we don't hear from you, email, telephone call, snail mail, regular U.S. Postal Service, whatever. We don't hear from you in 1 month, then we're going to drop you off the list.
I believe that from what I heard over the last couple of months as Trump's been in office, that the Republican Party is doing a deep dive in a number of locations around the country where they believe that there's been voter fraud.
Yes.
Of one kind or another, and what they're trying to do before the next election, which is the midterms coming up at the end of next year, November of next year, that they've got to get as many of those things fixed and corrected before that election happens. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of shenanigans take place.
Well, our friend Steve Larsen up in Polk County, who seems to have quite a bit of boots on the ground, went and did a, as you say, a deep dive up in Polk County. He found people registered at addresses that don't exist. He found dozens of people registered at some just residential home. They found a lot of things that were at best suspect. And I said, if it's happening in Polk, it's probably happening in Highlands. It's probably happening in all the counties. There's something, and it's going to take some people who have an interest to begin to look into these kinds of things. And like I say, we're going to get somebody from the Florida Division of Elections to talk about this this off-year voter roll cleanup. And I would like to get some county supervisors of elections to come forward and say, look, this is what we're doing, and this is what's happening in this county.
Well, the other thing that I think everybody needs, and I don't care which party you're associated with, but there are now upwards of 10 million new people in the country.
Yes.
In the last 4 years. And there's no doubt in my mind that the Democrat Party especially is going to get as many of those illegals to vote as they can. That's why they brought them here. They can say what they want, but they brought them here for one purpose: turn them into Democratic voters. So it's going to behoove the Republican hierarchy to make sure that none of those 10 million plus become eligible voters.
Oh, and in some states, illegals can vote, arguably, in state and local elections. I have great questions. What keeps them from voting in national elections? I'm not sure how that works exactly.
Well, why would you want to lose a local election to illegal voters?
Right.
Why would you want to do that? I mean, that makes, I know what they say, but that makes no sense. But if your goal is to flood the system with more voters, this is exactly what they've had planned.
Well, here in Florida, they have, Ron DeSantis has attempted to make it a state crime to be an illegal alien in the Sunshine State. He rests his case on the fact that if you're out here and did not go through due process, then you're here illegally. That being said, you shouldn't have any kind of benefits, much less the idea that you can vote. And I'm not sure that every state believes that. There are states, I would argue, that probably California, probably Colorado,
New York.
probably New York, Illinois.
Yep.
Some of these other states
suspects.
that run their own elections that you can't do very much about. But you have but you do have the ability to begin to export the illegals back out.
Well, and the other thing that happened, if remember, the Biden administration dumped the illegals, as many as they could, in Republican districts. They did it on purpose. They want to flip those districts from Republican to Democrat. So if you're in a situation, it very well could be right here in Highlands County, because registered-wise, the Republicans have a pretty big lead in Highlands County,
Yes.
and it's historically been a Republican county and whatnot. Not that all the Republicans vote Republicans, but
Yes.
They're listed as a Republican. So I think even in Highlands County, we've got to be careful that that the registered voters are correct. They're not flooded with illegals here and elsewhere, because that was the goal of the Biden administration. Say what they want, but that's what they did. And now the midterms are going to be very critical. They only have a 2 or 3 or 4 vote majority. So if they lose that majority, guess what happens?
Yeah.
Impeachment happens on day one.
Well, that's, I think, the least of our worries. But I think that is a very important point, and that's why they are fighting tooth and nail to keep the deportations from happening.
Oh, yeah.
And the Trump administration has worked, as we know, as hard as they can to begin to send, especially the gang members at the very beginning of this, trying to find the illegals who are engaged in illegal activities to get them out of the country. But just the other day, we heard Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd in one of his press conferences saying, look, if you're uneasy about being in the country illegally, you can leave. Mm-hmm. And I think that if there were people who wanted to leave the country, there are agencies that would be more than happy to help them with that to return to their country of origin. They don't necessarily have to go to El Salvador or some of the other places that they're being exported. But the number that they're getting out, even now, is a pittance compared to what was coming in daily in this country.
Well, I saw it this morning. They had the latest up there, and I thought, and I don't know if this was for a week or for a month, that they said there was like 6,000 for some time frame. But when you go back and look a few months or even into last year, you were talking 75, 80, 100,000
a day
on a regular basis. Yes.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's upwards of 10 million plus. So that's a lot of people, and I got to say it, but they were brought here for one purpose and one purpose only. They can say all they want about humanitarian issues. That's not why they brought them here. They brought them here to become voters. And that's it.
One of the biggest problems, and it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room that nobody wants to talk about, is it's not necessarily the southern border. It's the northern border. Oh, yeah. It's the border with Canada. And our dear friend, the late Lester Lobb, told us about a time when he was coming back out of Canada, drove through a Canadian check station back in the United States. There was nobody there. Mm-hmm. They drove right through. He stopped and looked around. There was nobody there, and they just drove back in. I think it was into New York State when they drove back to come back to Florida, and there was nobody there. That doesn't even begin to cover some of the areas along the border that have no fences, nothing. And there was one of the race car drivers in Sebring. I cannot remember. It was one of the Archer brothers. Was out in Minnesota on his snowmobile, and he was ramming around out there riding his snowmobile, and suddenly he gets pulled over by a Canadian Mountie, and he says, "Do you know where you are?" He says, "I don't know. I'm just out here." And he thought it was in Minnesota. He said, "No, you've crossed the border and come into Canada." He says, "He came into Canada." He says, "And you're in Canada illegally." And they fined him for it because he was on his snowmobile, and there was no dotted line that says U.S. Canada. So he just came in inadvertently illegally, and look what the Canadians did to him. Now the Canadians are upset about tariffs, and they want to get under this. It was just yesterday, I believe, that President Trump announced and Pete Hegseth announced the Golden Dome defense system. Canada wants to be part of that. Mm-hmm. And it was Kash Patel saying, Kash Patel, head of the FBI, you need to close your borders, and you need to close them now.
Yep. Yeah, because that border is, if not as longer than the southern border.
Yes.
And we have practically no fencing there at all, none. And it would be ill-conceived to try and put a wall up between Canada and the United States. I mean, it would be costly like we couldn't believe. And I don't know that the return on that investment would ever come close. But the Canadians need to do their job, stop the crossings into the United States by illegals, and stop the drug flow.
That's the thing. Kash Patel was in a press conference. I saw it on Right Side Broadcasting, but I think it was what they call a pool camera, where everybody gets a chance to use the camera. And he was talking about how the fentanyl that's coming in the United States, a lot of the other illegal drugs and illegal people, not only from South America, but from China, from Europe, from the Mideast, are coming in through the northern border and may or may not be getting help, and maybe not directly from the Canadian government, but maybe from some agencies that want to have no borders between Canada and the United States, and that doesn't mean making them the 51st state, but it's something that needs to happen. It needs to happen now. I don't see Pierre Trudeau or any of the Canadians working in that direction.
No, the new there was a conservative candidate down there had a big lead, and then when Trump started talking about taking over Canada as a 51st state, and I know it was just bluster with him.
Yeah.
I mean that's what. But the opposite candidate of the conservative whipped up so much sentiment against anti-America, pro-Canadian, anti-Trump for what he was doing, all that stuff. He ended up winning. And the conservative candidate had like a 15 or 20 point lead up until very close to the election day, and then he got beat because of they played it. I give them credit. They took that and they whipped up sentiment amongst the voters, and they managed to win.
I think, and a lot of it was people, some of the political pundits suggested that had President Trump waited for several weeks to impose the tariffs and starting trying to get all the tariffs back to zero, if he'd have waited for that, the conservatives would have won.
Until after the election.
Yeah.
Don't say anything and let the election happen, then say whatever you want to say. But the conservative, before that, he was well ahead, and there's almost no doubt that he would have won. But now this guy came in, he's pounding his chest, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and so on. So we'll see. I know they're still hanging out. The Canadians are hanging out, waiting for something. But I think as more of these countries sign up for some kind of tariff modification and get more towards an equal, if you will, between the two countries, 3 countries, 50, whatever countries, and so on, I think it'll help a lot. So we'll see where it takes place. Matter of fact, I had some information that was our trading partners, and when you look at it, we have a trading imbalance with Mexico of $171 billion. Okay?
Wow.
With Canada, it's a $64 billion. You go down the list, you got China at $295 billion. All right, Germany 84, Japan 68, South Korea 66, Taiwan 73, Vietnam $123 billion trading deficit.
We see a lot of products made in Vietnam.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I got something the other day, and I can't remember what it was, but I looked at it, it said made in Vietnam. And so, but you just take a look at it. India was 45, United Kingdom, but they've already settled with with the trade agreement, so they were almost 12 billion. But the big ones, they got a 90-day, if you will, 90-day trial embargo on tariffs with China, and we'll see how that goes with 90 days. If they get a permanent agreement at the end of that, we'll see. I don't really trust the Chinese, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And who's Bibi Netanyahu said trust but verify. But all of that being said, I think that there's 2 elements to this. Number one is the tariffs. But number 2 is the ability to sell your products in other countries. There's a pretty famous clip of Donald Trump 30 years ago on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where he's talking about this very same thing. And he says, Oprah, try to sell your products in Japan. You can't do it. They will not let you. That they make it so cumbersome for you to try to market your product in other countries. It's just not feasible. And we've talked for years about what the Chinese demand from you is that you have to have a Chinese partner, and they have to be able to look at your proprietary information, and they have to look at how you do things. And pretty soon they're doing what you did, and they throw you out.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
Donald Trump has been going into some of these countries that have trade barriers like that and saying, look, it's not only the tariffs, you have to let us sell our products the way we let you sell your products, or we're going to do to you what you're doing to us.
Well, for instance, Germany allows almost no American cars into Germany, American-made cars. Yet, how many German cars do we have in this country?
Oh, my.
Thousands and thousands
Porsche,
and thousands
Mercedes.
of them. All kinds of them.
Audi.
And yet they won't allow us in. And, and you're right, it's not just the actual tariff itself, it's also the regulations they put in place.
Yes.
Well, we only have one inspector and he only works on Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to take us about 6 months before we can process your products. So that's a trade barrier. And that kind of stuff happens. And they throw these roadblocks in front of you, so you can't get your product in there to try and market it and be able to sell it.
And so the problem, and we've seen this with these retaliatory tariffs, where the tariffs, I think, on China went from 145% to 200%, and they said, but the Chinese need the American consumers.
Yes, they do.
So at some point they want to say, okay, we'll talk about this, but in that 6 to 8 weeks that they've been fighting about that, the prices go up and the production goes down, and now some of these countries, as we've seen, are moving their production facilities to the United States so that they won't have to do this, and it involves putting our people back to work. And so there's some short-term pain for this, but at some point I think it's going to end up being where looking for the American flag label. We were at the store the other day, and I do the dishes. I like these certain kind of scrunchies, and we found them 10 in a pack made in Mexico, or 2 in a pack made in the United States. We bought the 2 in a pack, and it's by a subsidiary of the Brillo company, for the people who used to use Brillo pads, the metal pads. So I'm going to send them a note saying thank you for having this product, because it's better to have something that's a little more inspected than to not have that choice.
Right, and it's hard. It is hard to find things that you want, that you use in your everyday life, that are made in America. It's really hard. You have to look for it. You have to watch for it, because the one thing I don't understand, if I was an American company, let's pick our local, you can say a Walmart, a Publix, whatever, the bigger stores, if you will. I would be proud if I had a section that made in America only products, whether it's food or some other stuff. Walmart at some point said years ago they were going to do that, but I've yet to see anything where they specifically lay out and say, these are American-made products.
Not around here.
No, not that I've seen. No.
I have seen on social media several posts asking people to contact Amazon. If you have we have an Amazon Prime account, and contact the Amazon saying, we want a filter that says made in USA products, and we want you to, they have not, Jeff Bezos has not done that yet, but looking for products made in the United States. And that's why I want to have madeinusa.com, who we had on the Barry Foster Show radio program several years ago, and I think we had a Zoom at the Tea Party, didn't we not?
Yes, we did. Yep.
For them talking about this. Sandra and I, at one point in our lives, went up to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and we were shopping around, and they have a big shopping area that they call the Island, because there's a little canal that goes around the outside, and there was a Made in USA store, and we went in and we bought some stuff simply because it was made in the United States.
Right.
In fact, I'm looking for, I have these pens that I get from a certain company, and the pens are made in China, and I was going to get something that said thebarryfostershow.net on them, which is our website. And when I got to the end of making the purchase, they said that there was going to be an $8 tariff fee. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. If it's tariffs, you add it to the cost of the product. You don't just stick it on the end. Like I said, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to make me mad about the tariffs, which I'm not. So I'm now looking for a company that makes their, I think I found one, the pens are not of the quality I want. Instead of being metal pens with a nice clicker on the top, they're plastic pens.
Right.
But they're made out of old drinking bottles. They're recycled. And I'm really considering getting some of those because, A, they're made in America, and B, they're made of recycled products. So I want to find out, I may spend a little bit more to get that product. And it took some looking around. I had to go to the internet, the wonderful, horrible internet, and say, pens made in the United States. And you know what? There's a lot of really high-end pens. I mean, if you want to spend a couple $100 on a pen, you can find one made in the United States. And they are high-quality, beautiful pens.
Yep.
Me, I want to find something I can give away.
Right.
So I'm down into the, 59 cents for 100, per unit for 100 or so,
Yep.
I'm more at that level because I want to give them away. But I think in the long run, if more of us do it, it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be advertised and promoted by the government. I really do believe that. There's no reason why they can't have a web page that says Made in America products.
Yes.
And on a government website, so you just go on the computer, you bring up that website, and you can see all the products that are made in America. And I think that's the way you got to start promoting it rather than just talk about it. You promote it with advertising, some video stuff, whatever, show people how to get on the website. Got to simplify it, make it easy for them to get on there and say, okay, here's all the products, you search for what you're looking for.
So if you go up to like madeinusa.com, you can go to the contact us and say, we heard about you on the Barry Foster Show. Why don't you come on and talk to them? But all that being said, you can look up Made in America products, Made in USA products. You can find, it takes a little bit of combing through the different sites to see what products there are. But there's a couple of what you would call funnel sites that if you go to that product through that site, then they get a few cents kickback off.
I'll give it the fellow that we had that I visited their factory up in New York State Silverware, and what very interesting. I mean, much more complicated than I thought. Okay, but it was interesting. They had machinery that was probably from back to the beginning of the century. I'm not kidding, to stamp out these spoons and forks and knives and whatnot. But he was a very open person. And I think I could get him to talk to us.
That was the old Oneida factory, wasn't it? The old Oneida factory?
Oneida.
Oneida,
yeah. And it was a section of one of their buildings, because these buildings they're
a million square
huge.
feet.
Yeah, they're huge and whatnot. But he had taken part of it, and he used to work for them way back when. But when they folded up or merged, whatever they did, he decided, look, there's a market for made in American silverware, and so this is what he's doing.
And they have Freedom Silverware, stamped with patriotic things.
Beautiful stuff. Yeah.
They're very ornate.
Yeah.
And yeah. I found it very interesting. He said that his biggest seller was made for Harley Davidson. And it has all the skulls and all that kind of stuff. And when they first came to him, he turned them down. He said, nobody's ever going to buy this. And so they begged him, and they said, well, just make a test run. And he's been selling so much of it. It just hasn't gone away. And that's good, because we want to see the cash register ring for those guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so on. So, yeah, so I think that's somebody that you could definitely get on to talk about his products and tell his story again. And
absolutely.
Reach a little different audience.
Well, we're at the end of our first segment here, so we want to tell you we're going to have another program tomorrow, and you've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show with John Larsen, recorded on Wednesday, May the 21st at the Ridge Floor Studios, located in the City of Charm, downtown Avon Park. If you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. Check out our YouTube page at the Barry Foster Show Daily. We'll be putting up new programming and new notes. And please subscribe to our YouTube page and join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and on Instagram. It would be very, very much appreciated. John, we appreciate you being back, and we're going to look forward to another program tomorrow, and we'll see you next time.